He was a journalist, he was a council member, and now Will Haynie is the new mayor of the town of Mount Pleasant. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with the new mayor one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Mayor.
Sounds good.
I know, this is wild.
Thank you. Remember, you interviewed me when I was a candidate for council 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And then twice as a councilman,
Right.
and now. And I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Coffee with Quintin.
That's right. You know, on my way over here, I was thinking this, Mayor. Okay, you are a journalist. You ran for council 2 years ago. You are currently, well, now you're mayor, and you were a council member. How do we get here?
We get here by doing what you're doing. You get involved in the public realm. And my being a newspaper columnist led to where I am today. Had I not done that, one, nobody would have known who I was. But two, to be current as a journalist in any sort, you got to know what's going on, and you've got to go to people with what they're thinking about and what's affecting their daily lives. And seriously, one day my wife, I was writing a column, she said, you know, you might have reached the point where you need to step away from the keyboard and jump in the arena. And that's when I decided to run. So thank you, Suzette.
Yes. And I know that obviously she had her, you know, health issues. What is it like for her to see you as mayor?
It really has not sunk in yet, but you know, she teaches at Jenny Moore,
Yes.
and school teachers are there. She leaves our house at 6:15 every morning. The students start coming in at 7:05. So she would teach all day, rush home, throw on something appropriate for a campaign event, campaign with me at night. And so she has been pretty exhausted, but that's the kind of wife I have. I would not be here without her.
Wow.
In no sense. But, you know, fortunately, the cancer episode was a very minor thing. It was not even classified as stage 1 yet. It was stage 1A, and that's behind us, and everything is clear. So we're happy.
You are indeed. And speaking of happy, let's talk about the campaign.
Sure.
I was walking up the driveway here at the town hall, and it says, and I saw your flyer laying down, new leadership, new direction.
I just picked it up.
Really?
I picked it up. It was lying out there on the road. I don't know where it came from. Yeah.
Wow. What is the direction Mount Pleasant going in right now, in your mind?
You mean up to this point?
Right.
Up to this point, it's that we are a town whose sole focus seems to be real estate development. It's homes, it's buildings, it's hotels,
Right.
and I've been campaigning for a year. I announced in October of 16, and I heard this from every corner. My first event was in Dunes West, and I'm telling you, and I think the precinct votes, which you have seen, prove there is no divide in this town.
Right.
There's no divide at all. Now, there are different needs because newer neighborhoods have a different infrastructure, especially drainage, than the old neighborhoods, which have virtually none in terms of drainage, or at least functioning. But the attitude is, when I leave home in the morning, I see bulldozers, and when I get home in the afternoon, I see new bulldozers near my home. Wow. And one lady stood up in in one of our forums with citizens and said, I just have one question. What happened to my town? And that's a shame. Now, nobody foresaw the real estate boom. Nobody could, I mean, look, we're coming out of the Great Recession just a few years ago.
Right.
And we had incentives left in there, that incentives for development.
Right.
And when I got on council, we started doing away with some of those, and the whole movement was. But Quintin, to answer your question, we have been a town that everybody, when you talk Mount Pleasant, what do you think? Growth. You think real estate growth. And it's time to catch up our roads, our drainage, and we don't control the schools, but my wife's in there right now as we speak, and our schools are going to be bursting at the seams. Most of them already are.
Leadership. What would a Will Haynie leadership look like in your mind?
It would look like the columnist who wrote things that people were thinking, and that's the best thing that anybody ever said to me as a columnist. You said what I was already thinking. Not that I said anything new or different,
right,
or anything enlightened or brilliant. I just said what people were thinking. And as a campaigner, I campaigned on what people were thinking, and as mayor, and everybody knows Mount Pleasant does not have the strong mayor. We have the council form, also called the weak mayor.
Right.
So the only real tool you have as mayor of this town is your ability to lead. And I have already begun meeting with the council members and talking about things, and I hope that we will see that when we have council meetings, our agenda, everybody's not that there's groupthink, but there's a place to discuss and angle and do all this, and then there's a place to go in there and act. And we're going to go in there and we're going to act.
Sure.
And I think the voters sent into office council members who share that same vision. Let's just keep Mount Pleasant very special, and that's what we're going to do.
You know, I guess it was 2000 when it was called, it was the big election situation down there. Florida, Florida, Florida.
Ugh.
Here in Mount Pleasant is comprehensive plan, comprehensive plan,
Yes.
comprehensive plan.
That's right. That's right. That sets the tone for this town, for what this town will be for the next 10 years as required by law. And we are not quite in the middle, but we're in the formative stages of that. We have something on our agenda for our first meeting tonight, at which I'll be sworn in, where we're going to make the citizens group a little more representative, and it'll be more inclusive. And I've never heard anybody argue with more inclusiveness in a citizens panel, especially since we have 3 new council members.
Sure.
Who need to have a voice and need to feel some ownership of that plan that comes out. It's not going to change the balance, and we don't know who people are going to appoint if it passes, but we're just going to let everybody put somebody on that committee of the people who already applied. No outliers. It has to be people that already applied to be on there. And I think we will have a broader voice in there. And then it'll go to the planning commission, and then to the planning committee, and then ultimately to council and the mayor.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, as we're sitting right now, everybody, any new administration you begin with, they talk about transparency. What is your definition of transparency in your administration?
My definition of that is anything that we do complies with the laws, with the sunshine laws. Any executive session we do applies with the laws about open meetings. And I've told the new council members and talking to them, if we have any question, we will stop or we will ask or we will defer, because I don't want our citizens writing letters to the editor questioning something that we did. And I met with our attorney yesterday, and I even asked on what's on our first agenda, does this mean we can say this or that in executive session? Because those laws are there for a reason.
Sure.
And executive session is an extremely powerful tool. Think about it. You've got an elected body that is in session that is allowed to go out of public view. And it should only be for very specific reasons, and I certainly hope we adhere to that. The other is just the actions of council. Anything we do, you know, the mayor here is a glorified member of council with a few, I mean, we get an office and we appoint committees, but anything we do needs to be, you know, subject to Freedom of Information Act, and it needs to be above board. One of the other things in transparency and more of the common vernacular that's not really covered by the law, you know, not like there's a violation of Sunshine Act or anything, but let's don't use our agenda and our ability as council members or the mayor to put items on the agenda for setups or gotchas or political traps or anything. Let's use the agenda for the town council meetings of the town of Mount Pleasant to move this town forward and to do the people's business. And I've just asked everybody, you know, I hope when the agenda comes out on Friday afternoon or Monday morning, we don't go, what the heck is that? And somebody has put something strange on there. Let's do the business of council and let's talk. I mean, there are times when you go, hey, we needed to put something on there. I did it for this meeting.
Right.
There are some things that need to be put on there, and I told council members before the agenda came out, hey, I put a couple of things on there that some of the things we just need to reaffirm some actions of the old council so that people know that the new makeup of this council still feels the same way. Just to have that continuity. Big word, continuity. Cup of coffee with Quintin. I hadn't finished my person yet.
You talk about the old council. Let me talk to you about the old council versus the new council.
Sure.
What do you want? What should you have? What could you have if you had the old council?
What do you mean? You talking about the former members of council
Yeah.
or what? Well, here's what I think, and this is not a personal thing, but I think and I said this election night. When I first ran in 2015, I was an outsider, and there were 4 of us who were outsiders, and the question was, is there too much growth and should we do anything about it? So 4 of us got elected in 2015, and then I just got elected mayor by an overwhelming margin, and I think the council members who got elected promised to control growth and protect our quality of life, and I think the question about growth has been settled. The question is, by what means and how much do we control it? And as I've met with the new council members, they agree The people have spoken. Okay, folks, we're dealing with growth out here. Look at Johnny Dodds Boulevard at 6 o'clock at night and tell me everybody's real satisfied with our growth and infrastructure and the relationship of those two. So I am operating on the assumption that the people have spoken. We need to do something about growth, and we need to do it as prudently and as effectively and legally as we can right now.
You know, we were talking off camera about all the Twitter attacks that you were getting. What was your secret to dealing with that?
Well, a little experience. I have been a congressional press secretary. I've been a morning talk radio show host, and I've been an editorial columnist in 3 newspapers, including 2 in North Carolina. So I'm used to getting hits. I guess the thing that bothered me the most about some of those was, you know, you get a letter to the editor about you, whether you're a columnist or a public official. The person's name on there, you know who's talking. With Twitter, anybody can start an account and it's anonymous, and there's a certain amount of cowardice behind that. And that was the worst thing, is that it was probably all the same, or a group of the same people just doing that. It was, if it hadn't been so kind of pathetic, it would have been funny. Some of the things they were saying were actually kind of funny. But that's not fun. It's not fun for your family to see those kind of things.
Right.
But you know, if somebody has a beef with you, write a letter to the editor, put your name on it, and stand up and be counted.
Fast forward, because obviously you talk a lot about the campaign. Could you write the campaign in one headline?
In one headline? The whole election, or my campaign in particular? I guess it's both.
Yes.
It was a referendum on development. And my whole purpose in that campaign was to make sure that we stayed on message, and that was the biggest threat to our quality of life in Mount Pleasant right now is overdevelopment. It was a referendum on development.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor Will Haynie, Mayor Will Haynie.
You're the first one to do that.
Oh, thank you.
At least in a broadcast
Yes,
sense.
sir.
Yeah.
Mayor Will Haynie.
Fitting.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate
it.
this.
Thank you, Quintin.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
I will.
And a good coffee.
There you go.